Subscribe if you want stories that rattle steel and echo through locked corridors. Like the video if you can feel the walls closing in, and comment what you do if the doors never opened, because at 2:17 a.m., Alcatraz counted its prisoners, and one of them counted back. The siren didn't start as a scream. It started as a cough. A short electrical chirp rolled through Cell House C, followed by a pause so deep it felt like the island itself held its breath. Then the full alarm erupted, ripping across concrete and iron. Lights snapped awake tier by tier. Doors stayed sealed, but every inmate was instantly upright, eyes cutting through the dark. Night alarms meant only three things: escape, death, or staff betrayal. Officer Brennan was first to reach the lower corridor. His boots struck metal grating in a sharp rhythm, each step echoing upward through stacked cells. Faces appeared behind bars like ghosts pressed against glass. No one spoke. Even the loud inmates stayed silent. Silence was safer. Silence meant listening. He stopped at Cell C, 142. The door sensor blinked green. Occupied. He checked again. Still green. But the bunk was empty. The blanket lay folded into a careful shape, a crude body outline under dim light. For half a second Brennan's brain accepted it as a sleeping man. Then the shape collapsed in his eyes. Too neat. Too staged. His radio trembled in his grip. Control. I've got a false body. C-142. Inmate missing. The corridor shifted. You couldn't see fear move through a prison, but you could feel it. It traveled in the way inmates leaned closer to their bars. In the way distant shouting suddenly stopped. Word spread faster than electricity. Someone had slipped. And Alcatraz did not slip. Within minutes, the tier flooded with officers. Keys clattered. Orders overlapped. The warden arrived still pulling on his coat, face tight with disbelief. The missing inmate's name hit the air like a dropped weight. Daniel Reyes. 7 years served. No violence inside. Library worker. Quiet. Invisible. They opened the cell. Nothing was broken. No bent bars. No forced lock. The sink was dry. The floor spotless. It looked less like an escape and more like a room that had rejected its occupant. Investigators combed every inch until a flashlight beam froze on the back wall. Tiny scratches. Rows and rows of them. Not random. Organized. Measured. Someone wiped away dust and exposed a pattern carved so shallow it hid in plain sight. Numbers. Arrows. Symbols linked by lines. A map layered into the paint itself. Reyes hadn't been counting days. He'd been diagramming the prison. The discovery tightened the air. Officers stepped back like the wall might collapse. The scratches matched architectural routes, maintenance access, inspection paths, blind angles between towers. Not a tunnel map. A procedural map. He'd charted how people moved, not walls. Control pulled surveillance. Footage showed Reyes entering his cell at lights out. He lay down. Rolled once. Then the image glitched. 3 frames flickered into static. When the picture returned, the bunk shape remained. Reyes did not. Technicians replayed the clip until their voices went flat. There was no visible exit. No door opening. No shadow crossing the tier. Just absence inserted between frames like a cut in reality. The warden ordered a structural sweep. Engineers ran scanners along the cell house spine. Hours passed. Inmates stayed locked down, tension simmering into something dangerous. A prison without certainty was a match near gasoline. Then the scanners chirped. A hollow space lit up behind the plumbing wall. They drilled through concrete and fed in a camera. The lens revealed a narrow maintenance artery sealed decades earlier, a forgotten service crawl running vertically through the block. Dust coated everything except a fresh smear carved straight upward. He'd climbed inside the bones of the prison. The passage led to a junction beneath administration. A steel hatch sat at the end, locked from the outside. According to protocol, that hatch required 2 officers and a supervisor key. It was hanging open. No signs of forced entry. No damage. Just obedience. The door had opened exactly the way it was designed to. Inside the junction lay a single object wrapped in plastic. A prison operations manual. Every page annotated. Margins dense with tight handwriting. Procedures cross-referenced. Emergency clauses circled. Entire sections rewritten into arrows and timing notes. The final page held one sentence. Every system explains itself. You just have to read long enough to hear it confess. The room went still. This wasn't an escape born from chaos. It was an escape born from compliance. Reyes hadn't broken Alcatraz. He'd followed it perfectly. Then a technician called from control. They'd found another camera glitch, this one in a corridor no inmate should ever reach. 3 missing frames. When the image stabilized, Reyes stood in the blind hallway. And he wasn't alone. A uniformed guard walked beside him, calm as routine, guiding him toward the outer maintenance gate. The timestamp kept running. No alarm triggered. No resistance. Just 2 figures moving through the prison like they belonged there. And when they reached the gate, the guard swiped a keycard and held the door open. The control room didn't erupt. It froze. Every monitor showed the same impossible truth from a different angle. Daniel Reyes walking through Alcatraz like a man finishing a shift, not escaping a life sentence. The guard beside him never looked over his shoulder. His posture was relaxed, practiced. This wasn't panic. This was choreography. The warden stared at the screen. "Name him." No one answered. The footage was clear enough to show the uniform, the badge outline, even the guard's build, tall, narrow shoulders, a slight limp in the left step. Recognizable to anyone who worked the tiers. But recognition carried a cost. Saying the name meant accusing one of their own of tearing a hole in the prison. Finally, Brennan spoke. Quiet. Certain. "That's Officer Hale." The room shifted. Hale had worked Alcatraz for 9 years. Clean record. Reliable. The kind of guard supervisors trusted with problem inmates and night rotations. The kind you stopped noticing because he was always exactly where procedure said he should be. Until he wasn't. They pulled Hale's location log. According to the system, he'd been stationed in Tower 3 during the escape. His badge never left the tower grid. His patrol route showed perfect compliance. The footage said otherwise. Someone had fed the prison a lie, and the prison had accepted it without hesitation. Internal lockdown escalated. Officers were ordered to remain on site. No one left the island. Hale was located in a break room, drinking coffee, unaware that the building had already turned against him. He didn't run when they approached. He didn't argue. He simply set the cup down and raised his hands like he'd rehearsed the moment. "You're late," he said calmly. The interrogation room felt smaller than a cell. Hale sat straight-backed, eyes steady, hands folded on the metal table. He didn't sweat. He didn't blink much. The warden watched him through the glass like a man studying a crack in a dam. "Where is Reyes?" Brennan asked. Hale tilted his head. "Where he was always going." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one that matters." Hours passed. Hale never denied helping. He never confessed either. He spoke in circles that sounded like philosophy but landed like threats. "You built a machine that runs on rules," he said softly. "You never asked what happens when someone learns to drive it." They searched Hale's locker. Nothing illegal. Nothing suspicious. Just a folded sheet of paper tucked inside his boot. A diagram. Not of tunnels. Not of doors. Of schedules. Shift rotations mapped like a heartbeat. Guard overlaps marked in red. Seconds counted between camera sweeps. Tiny windows of institutional blindness measured with surgical precision. Reyes hadn't escaped through a hole in the wall. He'd escaped through timing. The realization spread like infection. If the schedule could be weaponized once, it could be weaponized again. Every inmate suddenly sat inside a blueprint waiting to be read. Then control called down. Another camera glitch. This time in the laundry corridor, sealed since lockdown began. The feed flickered back to show a shadow crossing the frame. Not Reyes. Not Hale. Someone else. Response teams stormed the corridor. They found a laundry cart tipped on its side and a guard radio crushed under a wheel. No body. No struggle. Just absence again, staged with the same eerie neatness as Reyes's cell. A second officer missing. Fear changed flavor. This wasn't a completed escape. It was ongoing. The prison buzzed with whispers. Inmates tapped coded rhythms through pipes. Guards walked in tighter formations. Every locked door felt temporary. The island, once a fortress, now felt like a stage where the script had leaked. Investigators traced the corridor route and found a maintenance panel ajar. Behind it, another artery, smaller, newer, deliberately cut into old stone. Someone had been expanding the hidden pathways. Not decades ago. Recently. Inside the passage, taped to the wall, they found a portable recorder. Still running. Brennan pressed play. Reyes's voice filled the tunnel, calm and measured. If you're hearing this, the prison has already done what it always does. It counted wrong and blamed a person. It will arrest the visible hand and ignore the invisible design. That's the weakness. Not walls. Not guards. Assumptions. The recording crackled. There was never one exit. There are as many exits as there are readers. And I wasn't the first to learn. The tape clicked off. Silence swallowed the corridor. Brennan looked at the carved passage, at the fresh tool marks, at the architecture rewriting itself around them. Reyes hadn't just escaped. He'd taught someone else how. Control screamed over the radio. Multiple door errors. Simultaneous. Across 3 cell houses. Locks cycling open and shut in perfect rhythm, like the prison was breathing wrong. And on the main yard camera, every officer watched the same chilling image unfold. Cells opening. 1 tier at a time. With no one touching the controls. The first scream didn't come from an inmate. It came from a guard. The sound tore through the intercom before anyone could mute it. Raw, startled, human. Then the yard camera filled with motion. Doors along cell house C slid open in a clean mechanical wave, each lock disengaging with the same obedient click. No sparks. No damage. The system wasn't failing. It was following instructions. "Override," the warden shouted. Control hammered commands into the console. The screen responded with green confirmations, but the doors kept opening. The prison's brain acknowledged every order while ignoring all of them. Inmates stepped into the corridor slowly, unsure if the freedom was a trick. Years of conditioning fought against instinct. Some stood frozen in their thresholds, staring at guards who stared back with the same disbelief. Brennan grabbed a radio. "Containment lines. No escalation unless necessary. Keep them in the tiers." But escalation was already baked into the architecture. The prison had one rule above all others. Once motion started, it spread. Footsteps multiplied. Voices layered. The sound rose into a rolling thunder that echoed through concrete and steel. Not a riot, not yet, but the edge of one. A collective realization rippling through hundreds of men at once. The cage was negotiable. In control, a technician's voice shook. The command string, it's internal. Someone's running it from inside the network. "Shut the network down." "I can't." The shutdown command is looping back as unauthorized. The prison had locked its keepers out. Brennan sprinted toward the server room with a response team. The corridors felt narrower than ever, the air charged with the electricity of a building turning on its owners. Every security door they passed hesitated before opening, as if reconsidering. They reached the server room and found the steel door already open. Inside, a portable terminal sat plugged into the main rack. A simple device. Consumer grade. Wires snaked into the prison's nervous system like an 4. On the screen, lines of text scrolled in perfect rhythm with the opening cells. A message blinked at the top. "System test in progress." Brennan ripped the cable free. The scrolling stopped. Across the prison, the doors froze mid-cycle. Half open. Half closed. The building held its breath. For 3 seconds, there was silence. Then emergency locks slammed down all at once. The impact shook dust from the ceiling. Cells sealed. Corridors locked. The sound was final, brutal, absolute. The prison reasserted itself with the violence of gravity. Reports flooded in. Minor injuries. Panic. No fatalities. The line between catastrophe and survival had been thinner than anyone would admit publicly. Brennan turned back to the terminal. A final line had appeared after disconnection. Test complete. Thank you for participating. No signature. No name. Just proof. They traced the device. No fingerprints. No serial number. A ghost machine. Whoever installed it had walked into the heart of Alcatraz during lockdown and left without leaving a shadow. Hale watched the aftermath from his cell in administrative holding. When Brennan confronted him, the guard smiled faintly. "You're asking the wrong question," Hale said. "Then give me the right one." Hale leaned forward, voice barely above a whisper. "Why are you assuming this ends with Reyes?" Brennan felt the weight of the server room settle in his chest. "This wasn't an escape," Hale continued. "It was a demonstration. A rehearsal to prove the architecture could be read from the inside. Once you prove a thing is possible, you never put it back in the box." Months later, official reports called the incident a contained cyber breach assisted by a corrupt officer and a single manipulative inmate. The language was sterile, reassuring. The public accepted it because the alternative required imagining prisons as puzzles instead of walls. Alcatraz updated everything. New hardware. New protocols. New schedules written by committees determined to outthink ghosts. The island quieted. But the quiet felt staged. In a maximum security facility 2 states away, a maintenance worker found a message scratched behind a removable panel during routine inspection. The carving was small, careful, hidden where only someone looking for structure would ever see it. A diagram of door timings, annotated, and beneath it, a sentence cut into the metal with patient precision. "The system works exactly as written." The worker reported it. The panel was replaced. The incident logged and buried under paperwork thick enough to feel like closure. Yet somewhere, an inmate had already read the message. Somewhere, someone was studying. Not the walls. The instructions. And prisons, for all their steel and certainty, are built by people who believe instructions are safer than imagination. They're wrong. If you think this story was intense, you're not ready for the next one. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it.